Ultimate Pit Fight is Flesh and Blood's casual multiplayer format, and it has now recently and officially been added to armories. With this, I wanted to give some guidelines about how to build a UPF deck because it is different than your normal 1v1 decks. The requirements for an Ultimate Pit Fight deck are the exact same as a Blitz deck. A young hero, 40 card main board, and an 11 card sideboard for equipment and weapons. The difference is that the only card banned in UPF is Yorick, and that's just for sanctioned events. Feel free to use them at the kitchen table as much as you and your friends would like. While this video will not be going over the basics of deck building, I will put a link in the description below to DM Armada's deck building video, which will help you with that. Today I'll be focusing on the 3 core theories of building an Ultimate Pit Fight deck: the game plan, survivability, and the endgame. In order to best explain all this, I'll be building a Valda Bright Axe deck utilizing these 3 theories. So without further ado, go ahead and cranial crush the subscribe button and let's get to deck building. As with any format in Flesh and Blood, you first need to decide what your deck wants to do. For Valda, we know that we want there to be plenty of card draw going around so we can get those Seismic Surge tokens and send our big Guardian attacks for cheap, if not free. However, this is where UPF decks differ from your average 1v1 deck. In formats like Blitz and CC, you want to play the most efficient cards in order to outvalue your opponent. All that matters is that you win the game. But in UPF, well, obviously you want to win the game, and that's fine. However, you don't want to win in the normal, boring way. You want to win in style. Sure, you can fatigue your opponents with Oldhim or do the same old boring Azalea dominate red in the ledger strategies, and you'll probably win with those. But you probably won't remember those games. But draw 10 cards with Prism in a single turn, and that's a game you'll never forget. And that is truly what UPF is all about. It's about playing those crazy strategies that would never work in 1v1. Some quick examples of interesting strategies are Arcane Briar, Tiny Dancer Shiana, Broken Visceri, and for this video, Royal Valda. Whether it's a super niche strategy or playing the most busted stuff, you want your deck to be unique. Again, you want to win, but you want it to be exciting and memorable. So with this Valda deck, the game plan is going to be utilizing Crown of Dominion, Cash-In, and Earthlore Bounty to help facilitate gigantic swingy turns, hopefully with multiple attacks and with more cards than we ever even need. To start, I want to choose our main Guardian attacks. For this deck, I chose Red Cartilage Crushes, Red and Blue Macho Grandes, 1 copy of Pulverize, Red and Blue Thunderquakes, 2 Spinal Crushes, 2 Righteous Cleansings, Cranial Crushes, and Blue Disables. Next, we need to add some card draw in order to make those attacks cheaper. First and foremost is the aforementioned Cash-In, one of which will be free from the gold token we start with, and the other can be played with all the blues we'll run. We'll also add in Gorgonian Tome, 2 Red Blessings of Deliverances, 2 Tome of Fiendals, 1 Potion of Luck, 2 Coax of Commotions, and 2 This Round's on Me. The last 2 cards here let everyone draw cards, which will trigger both the Earthlore Bounty and Valda's ability, as well as hopefully making you some friends at the table. And so with the game plan and core of this deck figured out, we'll move on to the next step, which is survivability. In a normal game of Flesh and Blood, you can be as aggressive as you want, but this doesn't really work in a multiplayer setting. So when building an Ultimate Pit Fight deck, you want to make sure you have some form of survivability. This can be done in a few ways, namely armor, defense reactions, and life gain. This is where we'll figure out our armor package, as we now have a good idea of what we want the deck to look like. We're already running the Crown of Dichotomy and Earthlore Bounty, and so I'm going to add in both the Crater Fist and Steel Braid Buckler for our arms and shield option, as both block for 3. Because we're running the shield, that means we'll be playing the Titan's Fist, but this also lets us run the Arcane Lantern, which means that in case of Wizard, we only need the No Rune Hood and gloves. As for the feet, we could run the Iron Rot for the extra defense, or the Snapdragon Scalers for Coax of Commotion, but I'm personally going to run the Mage Master boots in order to utilize the Tome of Fiendals that we added earlier. And speaking of Tome of Fiendal, this is where we get to another core component of building any deck in any format, and that is overlapping value. We added the Tome of Fiendals namely to draw cards, but it also gains us life if played from the arsenal, and it cannot be understated how important this is. The same goes for Blessings of Deliverance, Coax of Commotion, and This Round's on Me. Each of these offers more value than just the card draw, helping us stay alive. And to round this section off, I also included 2 copies of Stamp Authority. This card shuts down on hit effects for everyone in the game, which will hopefully both protect us and not make too many enemies. Plus, if you can trigger the first ability, it'll let you gain an extra intelligence, and you can use that extra card for a big turn or to block with and keep yourself more alive. Also, while we didn't add any to this deck, I would like to mention that defense reactions like Sink Below and Fate Foreseen, as well as cards like Oasis Respite and even Peace of Mind, are great in this format. Oftentimes in UPF, what matters more is not just being able to kill everybody, but it's being able to out-survive them into the late game. And, then you kill whoever's left. And to do that, we need to add a few more cards specifically for the end game. Because you have multiple opponents in UPF, you need to be able to attack multiple times in a turn. If it's just down to 3 of you and you kill one person and aren't able to attack the other opponent, well, then you're going to be on the defensive and they're going to be on the offensive. And if you're at just a couple life and they have a full hand, you're pretty much screwed. So being able to pressure each opponent in the late game to rip cards out of their hands is incredibly important. And this is why I chose Valda for this video, because some classes like Ninja have no problem attacking a bunch of times, but Guardians are built for one big attack. So we need to round out this deck by adding some cards that can allow us multiple swings. The first is the MVP of this deck, Coax a Commotion. Not only does it let everyone draw for the Seismic Surge tokens and gain us life to keep us alive, it can also give us Quicken tokens, which will allow us to either send 2 big attacks or just 1, but also swing with the Titan's Fist. Following that same idea, we'll add a single Time Snap potion, which we can set up earlier in the game and use to either get a 2-attack turn or on the second copy of Tome of Fiendal. We'll also throw in a few attacks that have Go Again on their own, being Enlightened Strike, Zealous Belting, and Rouse the Ancients. Another card I'd like to mention that's not in this deck is Scar for a Scar, which is superb in this format. With multiple players, chances are you will be lower than someone for a majority of the game, so it almost always has Go Again without you even having to try. Whatever cards you choose to run here, just make sure that you have some ways to attack multiple people when the life totals get low. Otherwise, you could very well be teamed up on. Finally, with 2 slots left in the deck, we're going to run 2 blue pummels. While it's far more important to be able to keep both opponents at bay, you still want to be able to actually kill people, and since this deck can utilize Dominate, I felt that just a couple attack reactions was appropriate. But if you're running a hero that can already attack multiple times in a turn, then you could consider running more attack reactions to make sure you can actually get those kills. Now, you might have noticed that I left out a very strong card being Terra Sunder, and that was simply a personal choice as the card is very unfun to face. However, it's up to you to decide how miserable you want your decks to be. Keep in mind though, if you make people miserable, it'll make you some enemies, and that could cost you the whole game entirely. Ultimate Pit Fight is a super fun format, and while a lot of people are focused on competitive play, I firmly believe that most players are not looking to be tournament grinders. And with UPF being added to Armories, I am very excited to see this format grow. Hopefully this Valda build served as a great example of the theories of game plan, survivability, and the end game. And I hope that this video helps you to make your first Ultimate Pit Fight deck. But with that, I hope you all have a good day, and I hope you enjoy murdering your friends in this wonderful game of Flesh and Blood. If you liked this video and wanted to support me, consider checking out my Patreon. There's extra bonuses like Talishar card sleeves, early access to videos, and even your own GigaChad card. And to those who are already supporting me, you have my undying thanks. It's because of Chads like you that I can continue to do what I do. So please, stay Chadly, my friends.